The moment Sarah slammed her apartment door, tears streaming down her face, she knew she'd made a terrible mistake. She'd just watched the man she secretly loved for 2 years kiss another woman right in front of her building. But what she didn't know was that her impulsive reaction would set off a chain of events that would change both their lives forever. Stay with me until the end to discover how one misunderstanding led to the most unexpected love story you'll hear this year. If you enjoy real stories about second chances and finding love in unexpected places, hit that like button and subscribe for more heartwarming content that reminds us all that timing is everything in matters of the heart. Mark Wilson never planned on raising his daughter alone. At 34, he had imagined a different life, one with his wife Emma by his side as they watched 6-year-old Lily grow up. But life had other plans. 3 years ago, Emma's sudden diagnosis of aggressive cancer had torn their world apart, leaving Mark to navigate the complexities of single parenthood while processing his own grief. Their apartment in Westview Heights had become both a sanctuary and a prison of memories. The walls still held echoes of Emma's laughter, and sometimes, in the quiet moments after putting Lily to bed, Mark would sit on the balcony and allow himself to remember. Those were the moments when the weight of his responsibilities felt heaviest, when the loneliness threatened to consume him. Sarah Chen had moved into the apartment across the hall 18 months after Emma passed. At first, Mark barely noticed her. She was simply the quiet woman who sometimes collected his mail when he was away. But Lily had taken an immediate liking to her, especially after discovering that Sarah was a children's book illustrator. Soon, Sarah became a regular fixture in their lives, stopping by with cookies she'd baked or offering to watch Lily when Mark's babysitter canceled last minute. "Daddy, can Sarah come with us to the park today?" Lily would often ask, her eyes wide with hope. And Mark would find himself knocking on Sarah's door, apologizing for his daughter's persistence. "She's never a bother," Sarah would say with that gentle smile that had, over time, begun to make Mark's heart beat a little faster. "Let me grab my sketchbook." What Mark didn't know was that Sarah had fallen in love with both him and Lily. She loved their little family unit, the way Mark's eyes crinkled when he laughed, how he always made sure Lily's hair was perfectly braided even though his fingers were clumsy with the thin strands. She loved their Sunday morning pancake tradition and how Mark would leave sticky notes with silly drawings in Lily's lunchbox. But Sarah kept these feelings locked away. Mark still wore his wedding ring, and the photos of Emma were prominently displayed throughout their apartment. It wasn't her place to disrupt the delicate balance they had achieved in their grief. So she remained the friendly neighbor, the emergency babysitter, the woman who brought over homemade soup when Lily had the flu. "You're a lifesaver," Mark had told her countless times, never realizing how each casual expression of gratitude both warmed and wounded her heart. Spring had just begun to soften the edges of winter when everything changed. Mark's younger sister Melissa flew in from California for a surprise visit. She hadn't seen her brother or niece in over a year, and the reunion in the apartment building's lobby was emotional. Melissa threw her arms around Mark, planting a kiss on his cheek just as Sarah was returning from her morning coffee run. The sight of another woman, beautiful, laughing, intimately familiar with Mark, kissing him sent a shock through Sarah's system. She had no way of knowing this was Mark's sister. All she saw was the man she loved embracing someone else, and the coffee cup slipped from her fingers, splashing across the lobby floor. Mark turned at the sound, catching just a glimpse of Sarah's stricken face before she fled up the stairs, ignoring the elevator and his calls after her. "Who was that?" Melissa asked, still holding Lily's hand. "That's Sarah," Lily answered before Mark could. "She's Daddy's special friend. She makes the best cookies and draws princesses that look just like me." Mark felt a strange tightness in his chest at his daughter's words. Special friend. Was that what Sarah was? He hadn't allowed himself to categorize their relationship, to examine too closely the way his day brightened when he heard her knock on their door. "I should check on her," he said, frowning at the spilled coffee. She seemed upset. "Go," Melissa urged, understanding dawning in her eyes. "I'll take Lily up in a bit." Mark took the stairs 2 at a time, his mind racing. Had Sarah been crying? Why would seeing him with Melissa upset her unless? The thought stopped him in his tracks on the landing. Unless she felt something for him beyond friendship. The realization hit him with unexpected force. Had he been so wrapped up in his grief and responsibilities that he'd missed something important developing right in front of him? He knocked on Sarah's door, but there was no answer. He could hear movement inside, the soft padding of feet, a muffled sound that might have been a sob. "Sarah? It's Mark. Please open the door. That was my sister, Melissa. She surprised us with a visit." The silence stretched for so long that Mark thought she might not respond at all. Then, just as he was about to turn away, the door opened a crack. Sarah's face appeared, her eyes red-rimmed, embarrassment written across her features. "Your sister," she repeated, her voice small. "Yes," Mark said gently. "Melissa flew in from San Francisco this morning. I had no idea she was coming." Relief washed over Sarah's face, followed quickly by mortification. "Oh God, I'm so sorry. I don't know why I reacted like that. She stopped, unable to finish the sentence without revealing too much. Mark took a deep breath. "Can I come in? I think we need to talk." Sarah hesitated, then stepped back, opening the door wider. Her apartment was the mirror image of his own, but filled with her essence, colorful artwork on the walls, plants thriving on every surface, sketchbooks stacked on the coffee table. It smelled like her, that subtle blend of vanilla and something floral that always made him think of spring. "I'm so embarrassed," Sarah said, wrapping her arms around herself. "You must think I'm crazy." Mark moved closer, his heart pounding in a way it hadn't in years. "I think," he said carefully, "that I've been blind. And maybe a little afraid." Sarah looked up at him, confusion and hope warring in her expression. "Afraid of what?" "Of feeling something again. Of letting someone new into our lives. Of betraying Emma's memory." The words tumbled out, surprising even him with their honesty. "Mark, I would never want to replace Emma," Sarah said quickly. "I know how much you loved her, how much you still love her." "I know that," he said softly. "But I think I've been using my grief as a shield. It was easier to stay frozen than to risk my heart again. Easier for me, but not fair to Lily. And not fair to myself either." Sarah's breath caught. "What are you saying?" Mark took another step closer. "I'm saying that when I saw your face in the lobby, when I realized you might be jealous, something clicked into place. I've been feeling things for you for a long time, Sarah. Things I've been too scared to acknowledge." Tears welled in Sarah's eyes. "I've been in love with you for over a year," she whispered. "With both of you. But I never wanted to pressure you or make you uncomfortable. I was content just being in your lives, however you needed me." Mark reached out, gently brushing a tear from her cheek. "I don't deserve you." "Yes, you do," she said fiercely. "You deserve happiness, Mark. So does Lily. So do I." The moment hung between them, fragile and precious. Then Mark leaned forward and kissed her, softly at first, then with growing certainty. It felt like coming home to a place he'd never been before. When they finally pulled apart, Sarah's smile was radiant through her tears. "What happens now?" "Now," Mark said, taking her hand, "we go upstairs and I properly introduce you to my sister. And then we figure out the rest together, one day at a time." What neither of them expected was Lily's reaction when they walked into Mark's apartment hand in hand. The little girl took one look at them, jumped up from where she'd been showing Melissa her doll collection, and let out a whoop of joy. "Finally," she exclaimed, running to hug them both. "I asked Santa to make Sarah my new mommy, but he was taking forever." Mark and Sarah exchanged shocked glances over Lily's head while Melissa dissolved into laughter on the couch. "Out of the mouths of babes," she said, wiping tears of mirth from her eyes. "I've been here less than an hour and even I could see what was happening between you two." The months that followed weren't always easy. Mark struggled with guilt sometimes, wondering if he was dishonoring Emma's memory by finding happiness again. Sarah had moments of insecurity, worried about stepping into the role of mother figure to a child who had experienced such profound loss. But they faced these challenges together, with honesty and patience. They took things slowly, with Sarah maintaining her own apartment even as she spent more and more time with Mark and Lily. They established new traditions while honoring old ones, finding a delicate balance between past and present. 6 months after that fateful day in the lobby, Mark took Sarah to the beach where he and Emma had once scattered wildflower seeds on their first date. As the sun set over the water, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, he knelt in the sand. "Emma once told me, during her final days, that she wanted me to find love again," he said, his voice steady despite the emotion behind his words. "She made me promise not to close my heart forever. I didn't think it was possible until I met you." He opened a small velvet box, revealing a ring with a simple sapphire stone, not a diamond, because this wasn't about replacing what came before, but creating something new. "Sarah Chen, will you marry me? Will you help me raise Lily and build a new chapter of our lives together?" Sarah's "yes" was carried away by the ocean breeze, but the kiss that followed spoke volumes. Their wedding was small and meaningful, held in the community garden where they often took Lily to feed the ducks. Melissa flew in again, this time with no surprises except for the handmade quilt she'd created from some of Emma's old t-shirts, a wedding gift that acknowledged the past while celebrating the future. During the ceremony, Lily stood between them, holding both their hands as they exchanged vows. And when the officiant pronounced them husband and wife, it was Lily who cheered the loudest. Later that night, after Lily had fallen asleep surrounded by discarded cake plates and flower petals, Mark and Sarah stood on the balcony of what was now their shared apartment. "I never expected this," Sarah admitted, leaning into his embrace. "When I moved in across the hall, I was just hoping to find a quiet place to work on my illustrations. I never imagined I'd find a family." Mark kissed the top of her head. "Life rarely goes according to plan. Sometimes it's harder than we ever thought possible. And sometimes," he said, turning her to face him, "it gives us gifts we never dared to hope for." A year to the day after their wedding, Sarah gave birth to twins, a boy and a girl they named James and Emma. Lily, now 9, took her role as big sister with solemn responsibility, reading to the babies every night just as Sarah had once read to her. Their family wasn't conventional. It was built on loss and found in unexpected places. It included a mother who lived on in stories and photographs, and another mother who honored that legacy while creating her own. It was messy and complicated and more beautiful than any of them could have imagined. And it all began with a misunderstanding in an apartment lobby, with spilled coffee and a sister's innocent kiss on the cheek. It began with the courage to open a door, to speak truth after years of silence, to risk heartbreak for the chance at joy. Sarah and Mark's story continued to unfold in beautiful and unexpected ways as the years passed. Their blended family faced challenges, but they navigated them together with the same honesty and compassion that had brought them together in the first place. When Lily turned 13, she began asking more questions about her birth mother. Rather than feeling threatened, Sarah helped Mark create a special memory box filled with Emma's letters, photographs, and mementos. They spent evenings sharing stories, allowing Emma's presence to remain a cherished part of their family narrative. "I think Mom would have really liked you," Lily told Sarah one night after looking through old photos. The simple statement brought tears to both their eyes. The twins grew into curious, energetic children with personalities as different as night and day. James inherited Mark's analytical mind and quiet determination, while little Emma had Sarah's artistic talent and infectious laugh. Lily was fiercely protective of her younger siblings, though she'd never admit how much she adored them. Their apartment eventually became too small for their growing family. The decision to move was emotional. Both Mark and Sarah had formed deep attachments to the building where they'd found each other. But they found a charming house just 10 minutes away, with a backyard for the children and a small studio where Sarah could work on her increasingly successful book illustrations. On moving day, they stood in the empty apartment one last time, the walls bare of the artwork and photographs that had made it home. "It feels like we're leaving her behind," Mark admitted softly, running his hand along the kitchen counter where Emma had once cooked Sunday dinners. Sarah took his hand. "We're taking her with us," she said. "In Lily's smile. In the stories we tell. In the love that started here." As they closed the door for the final time, Mark realized that home wasn't about the walls around them. It was about the family they'd built together, unconventional, resilient, and bound by both blood and choice. Life continued to surprise them. Sarah's children's book series, inspired by their family's journey through grief and new beginnings, became an unexpected bestseller. Mark started a support group for widowed parents, turning his experience into a lifeline for others navigating similar paths. When Lily graduated high school as valedictorian, she thanked both her mothers in her speech, the one who had given her life and the one who had helped her live it fully. There wasn't a dry eye in the auditorium. The twins entered middle school with the typical drama and growth spurts. James developed his father's love for science, while Emma showed remarkable talent as a pianist. Their home was rarely quiet, filled with music, art, homework complaints, and the beautiful chaos of family life. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Mark took Sarah back to the beach where he had proposed. They walked barefoot along the shore as the sun set, gray beginning to streak their hair, laugh lines deepening around their eyes. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if Melissa hadn't visited that day?" Sarah asked, her fingers intertwined with his. "If I hadn't seen you two in the lobby?" Mark considered this. "I think we would have found our way to each other eventually. Some things are just meant to be, even if the path is winding." Sarah smiled, remembering the jealousy and heartache that had ultimately led to their happiness. "I'm glad I didn't have to wait any longer than I did." As they watched the waves crash against the shore, Mark reflected on the journey that had brought them here. From devastating loss to unexpected joy. From neighbors to soulmates. From broken pieces to a beautiful mosaic of family. Life rarely followed a straight line. It zigzagged and circled back, it stumbled and soared. But sometimes, if you were brave enough to keep your heart open, it led you exactly where you needed to be. That night, surrounded by their children and the life they'd built together, Mark and Sarah knew one thing with absolute certainty: love was worth the risk. Always. And as for the apartment building where it all began? New families moved in, new stories unfolded behind those doors. Perhaps another single parent found comfort in an unexpected friendship. Perhaps another heart healed through the simple kindness of a neighbor. Life went on, as it always does. But some love stories, like Mark and Sarah's, remind us that second chances aren't just possible. Sometimes, they're even better than we could have imagined. Sometimes the most profound love stories aren't about love at first sight. They're about the slow burn of friendship igniting into something deeper. They're about second chances and brave new beginnings. They're about finding family in the aftermath of loss. If this story touched your heart, remember that love often finds us when we least expect it. Don't be afraid to open your door to new possibilities, to recognize the potential for joy even after loss. Your next chapter might be waiting just across the hall. Like and subscribe for more stories that remind us of the resilience of the human heart and the unexpected ways love transforms our lives. Until next time, keep your hearts open to the possibilities that surround you every day. As the years continued to pass, Mark and Sarah's family grew not just in love but in wisdom. When the twins reached 16, they began asking about their own place in this complex family tapestry. Little Emma, named for a mother she'd never met, felt a special connection to her namesake. "Do you think she knows about us?" she asked Sarah one evening while looking through old photographs. "Do you think she would have liked me?" Sarah pulled her daughter close. "I have no doubt she would have adored you. Not just because you're named after her, but because you have her spirit, that same determination and kindness that your father fell in love with." James, more practical like his father, had different questions. "Wasn't it weird? falling in love with Dad when he was still so sad about his first wife? Sarah appreciated his directness. Love isn't always convenient or simple. Sometimes it arrives when you least expect it, and you have to decide whether to embrace it or let fear hold you back. By the time Lily entered college, studying psychology with plans to help children process grief, their family had developed a beautiful rhythm. Holidays included traditions from both Sarah's Chinese heritage and the customs Emma had once cherished. Photos of both mothers graced the walls of their home, a visual reminder that love expands rather than replaces. Mark's support group for widowed parents had grown into a non-profit organization with chapters across the state. Sarah illustrated a series of children's books about grief and healing that became standard resources in elementary school counseling offices. Together, they had transformed their pain into purpose, their love story into a beacon for others navigating similar paths. On the 20th anniversary of Emma's passing, the entire family visited her grave together. They brought wildflowers, her favorite, and spent the afternoon sharing stories. The twins, now 18, heard tales of the mother who had made their family possible through her love and through her absence. "I used to worry that moments like this would always feel heavy," Mark confessed to Sarah as they walked hand in hand back to the car, letting the children walk ahead. "But there's a peace now I never thought possible." Sarah squeezed his hand. "That's because you never tried to forget her. You made space for both loves in your heart." As they approached their silver wedding anniversary, Mark and Sarah found themselves empty nesters. Lily had married her college sweetheart and was expecting their first grandchild. The twins had left for universities on opposite coasts, James pursuing engineering, Emma studying music composition. Their house felt quieter but not empty. It was filled with the echoes of laughter, arguments, music lessons, and midnight conversations. It held the history of a family built from broken pieces and unexpected connections. "What should we do with all this space?" Mark asked one morning over coffee, looking around their family home that suddenly seemed too large. Sarah smiled, that same gentle smile that had first captured his heart across the hallway of an apartment building so many years ago. "I've been thinking about that. What if we converted part of the house into temporary housing for single parents going through difficult transitions? A safe landing place while they figure out their next steps." Mark's eyes lit up. A place where they might find unexpected connections? Maybe even across the hall? "Exactly," Sarah laughed. Lightning could strike twice. They called it Emma's Haven, and over the next decade, dozens of families found temporary shelter within its walls. Some stayed a few weeks, others several months. All left stronger than they arrived, carrying with them the subtle lesson embedded in the very foundation of the house, that life continues after loss, that love can be found in unexpected places, and that families come in all forms. When their first grandchild was born, a girl Lily named Emma Sarah, Mark and Sarah stood in the hospital room, overwhelmed by the continuation of their story into a new generation. "Three Emmas," Mark whispered, tears in his eyes. "Past, present, and future." Sarah leaned against his shoulder. "All connected by love." In their twilight years, as their hair turned fully silver and their steps slowed, Mark and Sarah often returned to the beach where he had proposed. They would sit on the sand, watching young families play at the shore's edge, marveling at how quickly time had passed. "If I could go back and tell myself anything on that day I spilled coffee in the lobby," Sarah said during one such visit, "I'd tell myself to be brave sooner. To not waste so much time being afraid." Mark smiled, the lines around his eyes deepening. "And I'd tell myself that loving again doesn't diminish what came before. That the heart is capable of infinite expansion." When Mark passed away peacefully in his sleep at 82, Sarah found herself facing a grief that echoed her husband's journey decades earlier. But she was not alone. Lily, the twins, grandchildren, and the extended family of those who had passed through Emma's Haven surrounded her with the same love and patience she had once shown Mark. At the memorial service, their youngest granddaughter read a passage from Sarah's most beloved children's book, the one about a family made of different pieces coming together to create something stronger and more beautiful than before. Sarah lived another decade, continuing their legacy through the foundation they had built together. And when she finally joined Mark, they buried her beside him, with Emma's grave nearby, three souls whose interconnected journeys had created ripples of healing that extended far beyond their own family. The apartment building where it all began was eventually renovated into condominiums, the lobby where a coffee cup once shattered completely redesigned. But sometimes, new residents would swear they could feel something special there, a sense of possibility, of lives changing course in an instant. Because that's the thing about love stories like Mark and Sarah's. They don't really end. They continue in the lives they touched, in the example they set, in the courage they inspire in others to open doors, both literal and metaphorical. So if you're watching this and wondering if your chance at love has passed, remember the single dad and his neighbor. Remember how one misunderstanding led to a lifetime of joy. Remember that sometimes, the most beautiful chapters of our lives begin after we think the story is over. Like and subscribe if this journey touched your heart. Share it with someone who might need to be reminded that second chances aren't just possible, they might be even more beautiful than we could imagine. Until next time, keep your heart open to the unexpected knocks at your door. You never know who might be standing on the other side.